in the military camp. Rows of tents stretched out as far as the eye could see, buzzing with energy and anticipation. Soldiers moved briskly, their boots pounding against the dirt as they prepared for the upcoming drill. They were busy polishing their gear, checking their rifles, and gathering in groups to discuss strategies. Laughter and chatter filled the air, creating an atmosphere that was both spirited and lively. In one corner of the camp, a few soldiers were tossing a football back and forth, their cheers echoing through the rows of tents. Nearby, others practiced marching in formation, their disciplined steps creating a rhythmic sound that blended with the playful shouts of their comrades. The camaraderie was palpable. These young men and women shared a bond forged through hard work and shared experiences. At the center of it all stood a large flagpole, proudly displaying the colors of their unit. It fluttered in the light breeze, a constant reminder of duty and honor. But beneath this cheerful exterior lay an undercurrent of tension. Everyone knew that the notorious General Thompson was due to arrive at any moment. His reputation as a strict leader had preceded him, filling many with dread. As soldiers exchanged nervous glances, whispers circulated about what might happen when he showed up. Would he bark orders or find fault with their preparations? The excitement of drill day turned into quiet apprehension as they awaited his presence. Suddenly, the sound of heavy footsteps approached, cutting through the laughter like thunder. The soldiers straightened up instinctively, eyes darting toward the entrance of the camp where General Thompson appeared. He strode in confidently with a stern look on his face, a clear signal that fun was about to be replaced by discipline. Little did he know that this day would not go as he expected. General Thompson strode into the camp like a storm cloud, an air of authority surrounding him that silenced the chatter and laughter. His uniform, crisply pressed and adorned with shiny medals, seemed to amplify his imposing presence. With a square jaw and sharp eyes that scanned the soldiers with a piercing gaze, he was a figure who commanded respect or fear, depending on who you asked. He was known for his tough demeanor, often barking orders and seeking perfection at every turn. Many soldiers had heard tales of his demanding nature. Rumors circulated about how he would call out a soldier for the slightest mistake during drills or inspections, turning small errors into major events. His reputation preceded him like thunder before a storm. Just the mention of his name could send shivers down spines. In his mind, strictness equated to discipline, and he believed this was the only way to shape his troops into elite soldiers. At the same time, General Thompson took pride in asserting his authority. He loved to walk through the camp, making sudden appearances to catch soldiers off guard. His sharp voice echoed in the air as he would remind everyone of their duties and the importance of following orders without question. He thrived on the power trip that came from watching soldiers jump at his commands, believing it instilled a sense of order and respect. However, there was another side to Thompson that not many got to see. Beneath his stern facade lay a desire to prove himself as a great leader, one who could whip even the most disobedient troops into shape. He often fooled himself into thinking that fear equated to loyalty. But on this day, as he approached the assembled soldiers, unaware of Private Jake and what was about to unfold, the line between authority and arrogance would soon be tested in ways that would shock them all. As General Thompson's footsteps echoed closer, a palpable tension enveloped the camp. The laughter and playful banter that had filled the air moments before faded into a hushed silence. Soldiers shifted uneasily on their feet, exchanging nervous glances as they braced for the arrival of their feared commander. It was as if a dark cloud had settled over them, casting shadows on their previously light-hearted spirits. Some soldiers stood tall, trying to maintain an image of confidence, while others fidgeted with their gear or avoided eye contact altogether. The camaraderie that had united them just moments ago now felt fragile under the weight of his authority. Whispers of previous encounters with the general floated through the ranks. Tales of reprimands and harsh words loomed like specters in their minds. In this atmosphere, respect mingled with fear. Many soldiers respected Thompson for his commitment to discipline and order, recognizing that he pushed them to be their best. However, that respect was laced with anxiety, knowing full well that his expectations could sometimes cross the line into intimidation. The anticipation of his arrival had everyone on edge. Would he notice a small mistake or call out someone for not meeting his high standards? Each soldier internally prepared for what they hoped would not be a public embarrassment. As they stood in formation, hearts racing and breaths shallow, thoughts flashed through their minds. Some hoped for a brief drill, others wished for him to leave them be. With every step he took closer, the soldiers collectively held their breath, waiting for the moment when he would seize control over them yet again. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife as they awaited the clash between authority and defiance that loomed just ahead. Little did they know that today's events would change everything they understood about strength and bravery. As the tension built in the camp, General Thompson unexpectedly spotted a group of soldiers gathered near the edge, their laughter ringing out like joyful bells. They were tossing a football back and forth, completely absorbed in their game, entirely oblivious to the approaching storm. Laughter erupted with each playful catch and throw, creating a stark contrast to the atmosphere of fear that hung heavy in the air around them. One of the soldiers, Private Mark, who had recently been promoted, was showcasing his skills, easily dodging other players and making impressive catches. The others cheered him on with enthusiasm, momentarily forgetting about their commanding officer's looming presence. Their carefree spirits brought light to what seemed like an otherwise dreary day. But it didn't take long for the sounds of joy to catch General Thompson's attention. His eyes narrowed as he approached, each step taken in measured strides and deliberate intent. The sound of boots marching over dirt was all it took to draw the soldiers' gaze away from the game and straight into the piercing glare of their general. Realizing too late they had attracted his attention, a hush fell over them like fog rolling in. "Do you call this discipline?" Thompson barked as he reached the group, eyebrows furrowed in anger. The air felt charged with electricity as anticipation hung thick among those watching from a distance. The weathered faces of seasoned soldiers shifted into expressions of concern. They held their breath, waiting for what was sure to be a punishing lecture. Private Mark froze mid-throw, his enthusiasm replaced by dread as words escaped him. With his heart racing and palms sweating, he tried to muster an apology or explanation, but faltered under Thompson's seething gaze. The laughter transformed into uneasy silence. Fun was suddenly replaced by fear as they braced for his wrath, unbeknownst to them that this confrontation would spiral into something far beyond their wildest expectations. Before the soldiers could brace themselves for what was coming, General Thompson arrived at the center of the group, his presence commanding immediate attention. His face twisted in anger, and with a swift motion, he lunged forward and grabbed Private Mark by the collar. The suddenness of the action left everyone around in stunned silence, their eyes widening as they witnessed this shocking display of authority. "Do you think this is a game?" Thompson bellowed, his voice booming like thunder across the camp. The other soldiers exchanged bewildered looks. Some gasped quietly, while others clenched their fists, unsure how to react. They watched in disbelief as their comrade, who moments ago had been the star of their game, now dangled uncomfortably before Thompson, like a puppet manipulated by its strings. Mark struggled to find words, his mouth opening and closing as he searched for an appropriate response. He felt the weight of not just the general's grip, but also the expectations of his fellow soldiers hanging in the air. Their expressions ranged from concern to indignation. Many admired Mark's bravery on the field, but questioned whether he would be able to stand firm in this moment of crisis. "Respect," General Thompson continued, shaking Mark slightly for emphasis. "You will earn it, through discipline and hard work, not by fooling around like children." The general's words cut through the air harshly, each syllable sending chills down the backs of those watching. In that moment, something shifted within the group. The laughter they shared earlier seemed like a distant memory, overshadowed by embarrassment and fear. They recognized that what they had considered light-hearted fun had drawn the ire of a man who demanded complete obedience. As Thompson released Mark with a shove that sent him staggering backward, tension tightened among the onlookers. They knew this confrontation was only beginning, and its aftermath would reverberate throughout their ranks far beyond this incident. As the tension hung thick in the air, one soldier stepped forward from the crowd, Private Jake. Known for his quick wit and fearless spirit, he was often the one to lighten the mood during tough times with a clever joke or a well-timed quip. Today, however, his usual playful demeanor was replaced by a serious resolve. Standing tall, he glanced at Private Mark, who still looked shaken after the general's angry outburst. Jake had always been a bit of a rebel among the ranks. With tousled hair and an irrepressible grin that seemed permanent, he often found himself in trouble for bending rules. Yet it was this very boldness that made him respected by his fellow soldiers. They admired his bravery and ability to stand up against authority when it mattered most. "Hey, General!" Jake called out, his voice cutting through the charged atmosphere like a knife. The group turned to him in surprise. They hadn't expected anyone to challenge Thompson so openly. "I think you've got it all wrong. We're not kids. We're trained soldiers trying to bond as a team." The soldiers shared hesitant glances, unsure of how their commanding officer would react to this sudden act of defiance. Mark's eyes widened with both fear and admiration for Jake's audacity. Jake took another step forward, undeterred by the potential consequences of challenging their strict commander. Thompson's gaze snapped towards Jake, eyes narrowing with fury. "And who do you think you are?" The general growled, his face flushed with anger. "You think you can question my authority?" But instead of backing down, Jake held his ground. "No, sir. I'm just saying we can have discipline without losing our spirit. We need each other more than we need your barking orders." His words hung in the air, drawing gasps from onlookers and shifting the dynamic within the camp dramatically. In that moment, Private Jake proved that bravery could manifest not just through silence and fear, but through standing up for what one believed in, even against a formidable opponent like General Thompson. The tension in the camp reached a boiling point as Private Jake's words hung in the air. The soldiers watched, breathless, uncertain of how General Thompson would react to this unexpected challenge. A mixture of fear and admiration coursed through them. They instinctively leaned forward, eager yet worried about what might happen next. General Thompson's face turned an alarming shade of crimson as he processed Jake's bold retort. For a moment, a heavy silence enveloped the camp, the kind that made hearts race and palms sweat. It was rare for anyone to question his authority directly, and the general seemed taken aback. Then, with eyes blazing, he took a step closer to Jake, towering over him like a storm cloud ready to unleash its fury. "Do you really think you can speak to me like that?" Thompson thundered, his voice echoing against the tents. "You think your little speeches will earn you respect? This isn't a game." His tone was sharp enough to slice through the palpable tension, and the soldiers felt themselves shrinking back instinctively. But instead of faltering under pressure, Jake stood firm. He met Thompson's fierce gaze with unwavering determination. "I'm not saying it's a game. I'm saying we're more than just soldiers following orders. We're a team." His voice rang out clear and confident, igniting a spark of hope among his comrades. They began to shift uneasily, but felt emboldened by Jake's courage. The general's fury morphed into frustration as he realized that Jake wasn't backing down. The standoff captured everyone's attention. Even those who had once been fearful found themselves inspired by Jake's bravery in facing such authority head-on. It was a pivotal moment that highlighted not just Jake's character, but also the growing desire within the ranks for camaraderie over fear. As they stood there, Jake defiantly facing Thompson while the rest held their breath, the atmosphere teetered on the edge of chaos. Would this act of defiance lead to punishment or spark change? In that charged moment, everything seemed possible, and the line between bravery and recklessness blurred enticingly before them all. General Thompson's anger boiled just beneath the surface as he stood towering over Private Jake. He had dealt with many soldiers who cowered at his fierce presence, and he assumed this would be no different. With the fire of indignation in his eyes, he thought he could easily intimidate Jake and force him back into submission. The general believed that the sight of his furious expression alone would be enough to put the rebellious private in his place. "Do you really think you can stand there and defy me, boy?" Thompson sneered, confidence dripping from every word. To him, Jake was just another young soldier, a little brash and naive, who didn't understand the real consequences of challenging authority. The general's arrogance blinded him to Jake's tenacity and skill forged from years of practice on the field. But Jake was no ordinary soldier. Known for his quick reflexes and sharp mind, he had spent countless hours training not just physically, but mentally as well. He understood the importance of teamwork and strategy, often applying these lessons from football drills to life in the camp. As he faced Thompson, Jake remained calm despite the pressure. "You act like you're the only one who matters here," Jake shot back, his voice steady and strong. "But we're all here for each other. We're a team. If you can't see that, maybe it's you who needs to rethink your approach." His words echoed across the camp, surprising everyone and causing them to ponder whether Thompson's methods were truly effective. The general laughed mockingly, believing that a show of bravado would deflate Jake's courage. But the more Thompson tried to assert dominance, the more Jake's resolve grew. The unexpected twist in their confrontation lay in how Thompson underestimated not only Jake's commitment, but also the respect he had earned from his fellow soldiers. As tension swirled around them like a storm about to break, it became clear that this encounter was destined to ignite more than just a debate. It was shaping up to be a defining moment for both Jake and General Thompson, a clash between arrogance and true leadership that could alter their fates forever. The charged atmosphere reached its breaking point as Jake defied General Thompson's authority. In a split second, something shifted within him. The tension that had been building snapped like a taut rubber band. With fire in his eyes, he launched himself at the general, surprising everyone around him, soldiers and Thompson alike. The camp erupted into chaos. Soldiers gasped, their hearts pounding as they witnessed their comrade take such a bold step. General Thompson, taken off guard, attempted to step back, but Jake was faster. Fueled by adrenaline and a fierce sense of justice, Jake whirled around and delivered a swift punch aimed at the general's jaw. The solid connection rang out like a clap of thunder, momentarily silencing the onlookers. Thompson stumbled backward, shock etched across his face. In that moment, the imposing general wasn't the one in control. It was Private Jake who now held the upper hand. A mixture of disbelief and excitement spread through the gathered soldiers as they watched their fellow private fight back against the authority figure who had intimidated them for so long. "Enough of this!" Jake shouted defiantly, shaking off any doubts or fears that had previously clouded his mind. Powered by the support of his comrades, he pushed forward with renewed energy. Every soldier present felt prompted to cheer as they watched someone stand up against a tyrannical boss. It was more than just a physical fight. It embodied their own frustrations and desires for respect. Thompson regained his footing but found himself at a disadvantage. No longer just a general barking orders, he was now face to face with a young soldier who refused to back down. As Jake stood there, a symbol of rebellion and courage, the line between authority and camaraderie blurred starkly in that moment of conflict. The soldiers were no longer passive bystanders. They felt empowered by Jake's bravery, and the camp buzzed with anticipation of what would happen next. This confrontation was not just about one soldier fighting back. It was a call to arms for all those who longed for a change in how their unity would be respected. A unification sparked by one brave act in the face of adversity. As Private Jake stood defiantly against General Thompson, the tension in the air transformed into an electric wave of excitement. The soldiers, initially stunned by Jake's boldness, quickly began to rally together, their hearts swelling with pride and admiration. With each punch that landed and every word that echoed through the camp, a chant of support rose from the ranks. "Jake! Jake! Jake!" they shouted, their voices growing louder with every pulse of adrenaline. The camaraderie that had been simmering beneath the surface suddenly erupted into a chorus of cheers, filling the camp with an infectious energy. Soldiers who had once felt afraid now found a brave voice within themselves, and they surged toward Jake in solidarity. Unity became their battle cry as they clapped their hands against their thighs and stomped their feet in rhythm, creating a harmonious sound that reverberated off the tents around them. Jake's courage inspired the soldiers to step up from the sidelines, fists raised in exhilaration. Each gathered soldier felt empowered by this act of defiance, as if Jake's bravery had ignited a long-buried flame within them all. They couldn't believe what they were witnessing. Their fellow private was not merely standing up for himself, but for every soldier who had ever felt bullied or belittled by commanding officers like Thompson. "What are you waiting for?" someone shouted from the back of the crowd. "Get him, Jake!" That simple encouragement fueled Jake's resolve even more. The words became a powerful chant that echoed through the camp as he fought back with renewed vigor. Thompson's expression shifted from shock to anger as he struggled to regain control amidst the uproar. He could feel the tide turning against him, realizing that his authority was being undermined before hundreds of his own troops. As he faced not just Jake, but also a united front of soldiers supporting him, it was clear that this fight was bigger than any individual confrontation. It was a symbolic stand for respect and mutual support against tyranny. With every cheer and every rallying cry echoing around him, Private Jake embodied not just resistance, but also hope, a catalyst for change that stirred a longing deep within all those present. The unity of spirit among the soldiers intensified the moment, solidifying their bond in defiance against adversity. The energy in the camp reached a fever pitch as Private Jake and General Thompson faced off, the tension crackling like static electricity in the air. With every chant of "Jake, Jake, Jake" reverberating around them, the soldiers felt an overwhelming sense of unity and anticipation. They could hardly believe that a confrontation they had only dreamt about was unfolding right before their eyes. As Thompson regained his composure, his anger fueled his movements. He stepped forward, ready to assert his dominance once more. But Jake, emboldened by the cheers and the support of his comrades, knew he couldn't back down now. The moment felt electric. He could feel his heart pounding in rhythm with the roaring crowd. With a sudden burst of determination, Jake seized the opportunity. As Thompson lunged, attempting to grab him again, Jake ducked low to avoid the attack and pivoted on his heel. In one fluid motion, he launched himself upward, delivering a stunning uppercut that connected squarely with Thompson's jaw. The impact echoed around the camp like a thunderclap, and time seemed to slow for an instant. Thompson's head snapped back as shock registered across his face. His imposing figure teetered for just a split second before gravity took its toll. The general stumbled backward, legs giving way beneath him, until he collapsed to the ground with a heavy thud, leaving the gathered soldiers in stunned silence. Then, as if ignited by a spark, the camp erupted in cheers and applause. The soldiers couldn't contain their exhilaration any longer. They flooded toward Jake, lifting him into the air on their shoulders. "You did it! You really did it!" they shouted, their voices rising in a cacophony of excitement and disbelief. In that climactic moment, Private Jake had not only knocked out General Thompson, but had also struck a blow against oppression itself. His act of bravery transformed him into a symbol of hope and resilience among the ranks. The soldiers rallied around him, their fears of authority dissipating like morning mist under a bright sun. They had witnessed something extraordinary, a shift in power that would resonate through their lives long after this day was over. As the dust settled after the fierce confrontation, the camp erupted with a mixture of astonishment and celebration. Soldiers flooded toward Private Jake, their eyes wide with admiration and disbelief. They couldn't grasp what they had just witnessed. One of their own had not only stood up to their imposing general, but had knocked him out cold in front of hundreds of witnesses. The hum of excitement rippled through the crowd, creating an exhilarating atmosphere that felt almost surreal. "Jake, you're incredible!" someone shouted as he was hoisted onto a makeshift throne of shoulders. Cheers erupted all around him, the sounds echoing against the camp walls like triumphant cannon fire. The soldiers were electrified, inspired by Jake's boldness and sense of justice. With each shout and cheer, they felt as if a weight had been lifted from their collective shoulders, giving them a fresh sense of empowerment. They had broken through the fear that General Thompson had instilled in them for far too long. As they celebrated, glances were cast toward the fallen general, who lay sprawled on the ground, a shocked expression frozen on his face. Mixed feelings began to swell within the ranks. Some soldiers felt a rush of exhilaration at seeing Thompson humbled, while others experienced a pang of uncertainty. He had been a tough leader, one they had respected even while fearing him. But now, seeing him down and vulnerable sparked a realization. Authority driven by intimidation could be challenged. "What comes next?" some whispered among themselves, glancing back at Jake, who was still basking in the glory of his victory. Conversations sparked about unity and the need for a leader who would inspire rather than instill fear. It became clear that this incident represented more than just an individual confrontation. It symbolized a turning point in how they viewed leadership and respect within their ranks. Amidst the elation, the soldiers began to understand that they had a choice. They could either continue to let fear dictate their actions or embrace camaraderie and support each other as equals. Jake had ignited a flame of hope, showing them that change was possible and that they could pave their own path forward, a path built on mutual respect rather than fear. In the immediate aftermath of the fight, Private Jake found himself at the center of attention, hailed as a hero by his fellow soldiers. Cheers and praises filled the air, and for the first time, he felt the weight of their respect rather than fear. They lifted him high on their shoulders, chanting his name, reveling in this newfound sense of unity and empowerment. However, amidst the exhilaration, a shadow loomed over Jake. What would come next? As the celebration continued, camp leaders convened to discuss the implications of Jake's actions. While many soldiers supported Jake's stand against Thompson, there were whispers of potential consequences. Some higher-ups questioned whether this act of defiance could set a dangerous precedent for discipline within the military ranks. He had knocked out a general, a severe breach of conduct that could lead to punishment. Jake sensed the shift in atmosphere. Amidst the roaring cheers, he couldn't shake off a feeling of apprehension. Would the very soldiers who exalted him now falter when faced with potential repercussions? In a moment alone, he looked around at his comrades' joyous faces and knew deep down that he would face whatever came next, head on. The following day brought clarity as Jake was summoned to meet with a panel of senior officers. Nervously, he entered the meeting room, fully aware of what was at stake. He took a deep breath and recounted the events that led to his confrontation with General Thompson. Jake stood firm in his belief that it was necessary to challenge authority when it overstepped its bounds and sought to instill fear instead of respect. To his surprise, instead of reprimanding him severely, the officers acknowledged the broader issues within the camp culture that Jake's actions had exposed. They commended him for his courage in standing up, recognizing that discipline could coexist with mutual respect. Instead of punishment, Jake was given an opportunity to help lead discussions on improving morale among troops and developing better leadership practices. Though he had faced repercussions for his actions, they ultimately led to positive changes within the camp's environment. The soldiers rallied behind Jake not only as a brave fighter, but as an agent of change, someone who dared to challenge outdated practices and inspire a new wave of camaraderie and trust among their ranks. This experience transformed him from just a soldier into a beacon of hope for his fellow comrades, lighting their way toward a future built on mutual respect rather than fear. In the wake of the confrontation, the soldiers began to reflect on the powerful lessons that had emerged from Jake's act of bravery. They understood that respect is not simply given because of rank. It must be earned through actions and integrity. Jake's willingness to stand up against General Thompson inspired them to reconsider the nature of authority within their camp. It became clear that true leadership is rooted in mutual respect and understanding, rather than intimidation and fear. The soldiers realized that courage comes in various forms. Jake's boldness had ignited a spark that encouraged them to voice their own opinions and concerns when they saw injustice. They learned that standing up for what is right, even when faced with daunting authority, can lead to significant change. The moment was transformative, demonstrating that while rules and discipline are important, they should never stifle unity or camaraderie among fellow soldiers. As discussions about leadership flourished in the camp, many began to express their gratitude toward Jake for his actions. He had not only knocked out a general, but also dispelled a cloud of fear that had lingered over them for far too long. The soldiers found themselves empowered to bring forth ideas about how their leaders could facilitate a more supportive environment, one where voices were heard and valued. This new understanding fostered bonds that were stronger than before. They committed themselves to each other, promising to uphold the principles of respect and bravery that Jake had demonstrated. It was a moment of reckoning for the entire camp. They stood together as a united front, ready to face future challenges with renewed confidence and cohesion. Jake's journey had taught them that standing up against authority could inspire not just individual acts of bravery, but also significant cultural shifts in their lives as soldiers. The road ahead would not be without its hurdles, but they were ready to navigate it together, guided by mutual respect, courage, and the unbreakable spirit of unity forged through this extraordinary experience. The events surrounding Private Jake's confrontation with General Thompson marked a significant transformation in the dynamics of the military camp. The once rigid atmosphere, dominated by fear and intimidation, gave way to a newfound sense of empowerment among the soldiers. They had witnessed firsthand how standing up to an authority figure could invoke change and inspire unity. The cheers that echoed through the camp resonated not just as praise for Jake, but as a collective acknowledgement of their capacity to challenge outdated practices. As discussions about leadership and respect flourished, the soldiers began to embrace a culture rooted in mutual support rather than fear. Many recognized that bravery took many forms, whether it was Jake's physical defiance or the courage required to voice dissent in the face of authority. This shift fostered stronger bonds among them. They united against the remnants of an oppressive environment, committing themselves to uphold values that encouraged collaboration and camaraderie. Moreover, Jake's role evolved from being merely a soldier to becoming a catalyst for change. His actions opened doors for constructive conversations about leadership styles and how they could better serve one another as equals. The officers who praised him emphasized that discipline should not come at the expense of morale or solidarity. As a result, Jake was tasked with leading initiatives aimed at improving communication within the ranks, ensuring every soldier's voice was heard. Moving forward, the soldiers felt invigorated and ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They understood that true strength came not from fear of punishment, but from standing together for what is right. With each training drill and challenge they encountered, they carried with them the lessons learned from this pivotal moment. Lessons about respect, integrity, and the courage to stand up against unjust authority. In this new era within the camp, there was hope for a more equitable future where leaders inspired rather than intimidated. The soldiers looked forward with renewed confidence, united in purpose, and ready to build a legacy based on respect, bravery, and unwavering support for one another. A legacy that would define them long after this day had passed.